Today, we're going to dive into the story of a man from 9th century Persia who is, to this day, one of the most revered and, well, most controversial figures in Sufism. His name is Abu Yazid al Bistami, a mystic whose words were so shocking they've kept people talking for over 1,000 years. To really wrap your head around this puzzle, you have to start with the shock factor. Because in moments of what he described as intense spiritual ecstasy, Abu Yazid would say things that, to anyone listening, sounded completely impossible. I mean, just imagine hearing that from a deeply religious figure. Glory to me. This is one of his most famous and, frankly, startling ecstatic utterances. It's a phrase that seems to put him on the same level as God. And for the people around him at the time, this was an absolute bombshell. And that right there, that's the core question we're tackling. Was this man a heretic claiming to be divine, or was something much, much deeper going on here? To find the answer, we can't just look at the shocking words alone. We have to look at the man himself and the incredibly pious life he led. So before we can even begin to understand the radical stuff, we have to understand the traditional side of him. And Abu Yazid's foundation was built on an almost legendary piety. This was not a man who took his faith lightly. Not at all. Just listen to this story about his devotion to his mother. One freezing night, she asked him for a glass of water. He went to get it, but by the time he came back, she'd fallen asleep. So what did he do? He stood there holding that cup of water all night long, waiting for her to wake up. His fingers nearly froze to the cup. Now, this isn't just some sweet little story. It tells you everything you need to know about the kind of discipline and reverence that was at the very core of his character. And that discipline, it went way beyond just his personal devotion. We know for a fact that Abu Yazid lived his life in strict, unwavering adherence to Islamic law, the Sharia. His prayers, his daily life, everything was meticulously aligned with his faith. So let's be super clear. This guy was no rebel tearing up the rulebook. He was living completely within it. Okay, so piety was his foundation. We've got that. But his spiritual journey, it went so much deeper. He followed this incredibly rigorous inner path, with disciplines all designed for one purpose, to bring him closer to the divine. You can really break down his path into 4 main pillars. First, there was intense and constant worship. Second, a deep asceticism, basically turning his back on worldly distractions. Third, something called tawakkul, which is a complete and total trust in God. And finally, the ultimate goal of it all, an all-consuming love for God, known as mahabba. He had this really powerful way of defining that trust, tawakkul. You can see in his own words, it's about getting to a point where you see no other support, no other witness except for the divine. It's a radical, absolute reliance on God for absolutely everything. And this whole path, it all leads to that divine love, mahabba. And listen to how he describes it as a force so powerful, it just overwhelms and conquers everything else. When that love shows up, he says, all the other desires, all the other sweetness of life, it just vanishes. The only thing left is the presence of God. Okay, so let's take a breath. We have a deeply pious man. He's on a path of intense spiritual discipline. So how in the world do we get from that back to glory to me? Well, the key, the absolute centerpiece of this whole mystery is the Sufi concept of erasing the self. This concept is known as fana, or annihilation. Now, we're not talking about physical death here. It's a spiritual state. It's where the individual ego, that little voice in your head that's always saying, I want this, I think that, I am this, is completely dissolved, just washed away in the overwhelming presence of God. The best way to picture it is like this. Think of a single drop of water falling into the ocean. Where did the drop go? It didn't just disappear, but its identity as a separate drop is completely gone. It's become one with the ocean. That, in a nutshell, is the idea of falan. Abu Yazid actually made a really sharp comparison to explain this. He said that a scholar who operates from their intellect is always watching themselves, observing their own actions. But the Gnostic, the mystic in this higher state, they're not looking inward anymore. Their focus is completely on God because their own self is simply no longer in the picture. And this quote right here just nails it. For Abu Yazid, it's like a cosmic trade-off. You can either be aware of yourself, or you can be aware of God. The two can't exist in the same space. One has to fade away for the other to be truly present. So now with this idea of fana, of annihilating the self, we have all the pieces. We can finally go back to that shocking statement that we started with and see it in a completely new light.
Let's ask the question again. If the individual ego, the I of Abu Yazid, has been completely dissolved, then who is left to speak? Who is the me in glory to me?
And this is the solution to the whole paradox. In that state of fana, the mystic believes it is no longer the man who's speaking. The man has become an empty vessel, a conduit, and the voice that comes out is the voice of the divine reality itself, speaking through him. It's not a man's claim to divinity. It's the sound of divinity filling a human void. Because he explored these absolute extremes of spiritual experience and brought back such profound, if challenging, insights, he wasn't ultimately branded a heretic. Instead, he was given this incredible title, Sultan al-Arifin, the Sultan of the Gnostics, a king among those who truly know. And so, the paradox of Abu Yazid leaves us with a question that still echoes today. His life forces us to ask, where exactly is the line between a soul that's completely absorbed in the divine and a mind that's lost to delusion? It's a question that pushes at the very limits of faith and what it means to be human.